Bless you.
Bless you. Yeah, let me check. Let me go to LP. Yeah, it looks like we're live on Twitter. Yeah, so we should be good.
Okay.
Yeah, Facebook. Yeah, we're good. We're rolling.
Good deal. All right. Well, thanks everybody who's here. My name is Sean Haw. I am running for Commissioner of Agriculture here in North Carolina this year. But really, I'm just trying to be the host and trying to highlight some of our other excellent candidates who are running, who will be on your ballot. Tonight we have George Cormos, who's running for U.S. Congress. Matthew Lasek, who's running for State House in Raleigh, and Thomas Hill, who is probably one of the few people who's been in this party longer than I have, who's running for State Senate in Cabarrus County. So thank you all for showing up. And I wanted to, since we're 11 minutes in now, let me start with you, George. I mean, you're running for U.S. Congress against Greg Murphy, who is probably the most hated person in North Carolina politics today. In a one-on-one, the Democrats didn't even bother to run anybody for it. So, what's your experience been like? What have you found out on the campaign trail?
Well, I guess the first thing that I'd say I found out is just how much he truly is disliked by even the what would have been the GOP faithful in my area. There are even down in Carteret County, down here where I live, some of the local people that I've met that would otherwise or have otherwise been putting up signs for Trump and a vast amount of numerous other candidates. Greg Murphy is the one person who seemingly no one's really willing to pick up a sign for and go out there and put it in the street. So that was sort of my first impression. The other impression was sort of realizing how exactly the behemoth that is the political machine works, in the sense that if you look at campaign finance reporting, this guy has raised something like $1.4 million and has spent about $800,000 through the second quarter, which, I mean, it's a bit daunting to sort of look at the reality of those numbers. And yet the other side of that is, gosh, I can't tell you for the life of me what he spent that money on. The only things that I've been able to come up with is I bet he's probably got a staff that is, running up the bill. And it would seem that all of his appearances on Fox News probably also cost money. So that's the only thing I've been able to come up with so far. But other than that, I've done a little bit of my own statistics work to sort of see in this 11 county area that I'm running in, from basically the Outer Banks, the Kildare Hills area, all the way down south here to Jacksonville, where Camp Lejeune is in Onslow County, and then going out to like Sampson County and Duplin County, and then even including his own county of Pitt County. Statistically, the independent voter is actually in the majority. And I know that's, it's everyone knows that it's sort of a bit of a new dawn that we're sort of embarking on here. But in my particular statistical research, it goes something like 190,000 registered independents, 180,000 registered Republicans, and about 150,000 registered Democrats. Also, it was sort of interesting to see after they redrew the districts, his own town of Greenville, previously that wasn't actually part of his district. There was only like a fifth of like the southeast chunk where he was sort of representing, but the rest of it, I'm kind of curious to see how it'll play out. I've had the opportunity to actually go to two separate speaking engagements out in Greenville for various well, one was a NAACP run event, and another one was, I think, a affiliated, some sort of an associate of that same grouping that was like a Greeks United of some sort of a multi collegiate forum. But what the interesting thing to see across all of it was that people really do want to hear other ideas. Even if you're a traditional left-leaning individual or a traditional right-leaning individual, there's a lot of open ears out there. And I guess I've just really been surprised. I've gotten random thumbs up from people that I did not expect to ever hear them say, like, "Hey, you got my vote." And I was like, "Wow, thank you."
Well, you sort of like set me up for my next question for you. But before I do that, I did just want to point out, I've run for U.S. Senate myself, and this is something I've campaigned on: is why do people spend so much money, millions of dollars, to win a job that pays $174,000 a year? It just seems a little odd to me. But I did want to ask you, like, what issues are you running on, and what kind of libertarian issues are you finding really resonate with the people in your district?
So basically, my platform essentially, initiated out of my dissatisfaction with what happened during what I call the COVID debacle. I see it, and to this day maintain that it was a very oppressive exercise of power from the federal government. And you'd be surprised to see how that actually resonates with many, many people. There's been a lot of conversation of like, oh, should you run a more left-leaning campaign to get the Democrats? Should you run a more right-leaning campaign, or whatever it is? And I can only really truly say that I basically picked four topics, four planks, if you will, that I thought, I think they're sort of like, they transcend this general notion of left versus right. So I basically picked the national debt. Right, that's an outrageous topic. They just keep on spending and taxing. Mm-hmm. Another topic that I feel passionate about is essentially marijuana reform. And that can be a little bit of a non-starter with certain conservatives, but it is a topic that has a wide support. I mean, we're talking like 70% support in the population at large, and even among conservatives, it's about 50% support. Another plank of mine that I feel passionate about, and this is it's not just school vouchers, because I think private education is the main thing, but the current status, or the current ideological line being pushed by the whether it's at the federal level, mostly from the federal level, coming down in support of certain transgender ideologies that I, for the life of me, cannot support. I have two little daughters, and I have to do what is in their best interest. So that is certainly something that is very close to my heart. And then the other thing that I feel very passionate about is qualified immunity reform. There is a very serious conversation we need to have regarding how much power we allow, it's not just police, but how much power we allow each other to exercise over each other. Because at the end of the day, your local police departments, they're only going to do as much as they feel like the neighborhood is going to basically accept, right? Whether it's at the local level of your town manager, whether it's your town commissioners, your mayor, at one point, someone's going to come down on them and say, hey, too much, or that's the wrong line. So that's sort of been the topics that I've been harping on, and I've been hitting on them. And it is a lot different in a sense if you look at the mainstream, the national conversation. Look at the two prominent candidates that are running for president at the time. You got one talking a whole lot about reproductive rights and abortion rights, and then the other one's just been sitting here hitting the drumbeat on illegal immigrants. And I do feel like there's a certain amount of it that is, how should I put this delicately? They're just kind of trying to stir up emotion and hate in these groups, and honestly, we've seen it, right? I mean, hey, one of them got shot, There is a lot that is going on out there in the political sphere that is mostly just them trying to preach fear, and you find the topic that people get really sensitive about. Find a topic that's, oh, they're trying to touch my body, or oh, they're taking my jobs, and then sort of reason and logic, they take a back seat somewhere. So I've really tried to maintain what I think is, you would say, oh, these are not number 1, 2, 3 topics of importance in politics, and yet this is the bread and butter of what actually affects your life every day. The way you interact with your police, the way you interact with your school, and then the amount of taxation that you have to deal with in order to live, as they say in say air quotes here, civilized society.
All right. Well, yeah, I think you've got just a tremendous opportunity in this one-on-one, and I'm looking forward to the results for you next week. For sure.
I am also very excited about it. I think, so I tried to run I tried to run in 2022, and, for various reasons, it didn't work out, but I wasn't ready for the Democrats to not put up a contender in this race. And when I realized that was the reality, I was just like, wow, are you serious? I get to challenge what effectively is the most pro-statist Republican that has ever been. I was just saying to myself, there's no way I could lose. And of course, some people say I'm living in la la land, but I think a little bit of positivity can go a long way. So,
all right. Well, Matt, I wanted to ask you two sort of similar questions, like what are you finding out? What kind of issues are you running on in your district in Raleigh, and what are you finding that really resonates with voters?
Well, first of all, I do a lot of door-to-door knocking on doors. I started that 2 years ago when I was running for Senate 14 in downtown Raleigh. And what I've found is that the way that they caricature the American people in the news, whether you're watching the left-leaning news or the right-leaning news, is that there's these people that are very extreme. But my experience with people has been that most people are almost excessively moderate and very rational and pretty darn reasonable. And so it's interesting to me that we can't seem to break this two-party stranglehold, considering that, as George mentioned, independents are the largest party in the state of North Carolina right now. And people are overwhelmingly rational. I've had so many great conversations, and people are not extreme, but our politics is extreme. So it's interesting to me that our politics don't really reflect what I think our society is right now, certainly not in the state of North Carolina. So that's been an interesting observation for me in both campaigns. For me, I'm running against Maria Cervania. She is what I think is I would characterize as maybe a healthcare industry insider. And I think a lot of people don't understand here in the state of North Carolina that healthcare is run sort of like Amway. You pay tribute up to a doctor for not any real reason other than the MDs would like to continue to maintain and exert control over how healthcare is delivered in the state. And I think that they have people's attention at a high level in the state. I think they enjoy maintaining a semi-monopoly on whether you can build a new surgical center or not. I think they like maintaining monopoly on holding nurse practitioners back from operating independently, or for pharmacists from prescribing drugs. You look at a number of states right now that have instituted those kinds of reforms to their certificate of need laws and their scope of practice laws, and you're seeing access to healthcare improve. We've got a real problem in the state of North Carolina with primary care access. They're giving more money to able-bodied adults now for Medicaid. And that's fine. The government can give more taxpayer money, whether it's federal or state money, to people to spend on healthcare. But you would hope that those healthcare services exist. And right now in this state, they don't exist. So now you've just given people more money to buy a product or a service that's not there. So we really need to address that. So those are really important to me. I find it totally ridiculous that we have people with advanced degrees in medicine with tons of clinical experience that aren't allowed to do general medicine or to be a primary care practitioner in states that are largely rural. nurse practitioners have been providing primary care for a long time with really successful results. There's literally no reason at all other than, I know interest rates are high, so to buy your second Porsche, it's a little more expensive than normal these days. So really, these are just easy things. Dr. Munger has a really good, I don't know what you would call it. I guess it's not a theory. I guess it's a theory, but that a lot of times as libertarians, we're at the destination, a libertarian stronger law, when really we should be talking about things that are important to people and kind of meeting people where they are right now. And so for me, I'm trying to find these simple things like, hey, in a rural area out in Eastern North Carolina, where you, instead of driving all the way to Greenville to go to a Vidant Healthcare Center and see a doctor and get a prescription for something simple, wouldn't it be great if you could just go 5 minutes away to your pharmacist? Because there's a pharmacy in just about every small town in North Carolina, and get a prescription and get it in a couple of days or a day versus waiting sometimes, weeks or a month, or driving somewhere that's in excess of 40, 50, 60 miles away. These are just common sense things. They're done already. They're easy. I think most people find them reasonable. So I'm trying to find things like this that we can build some consensus around with rational-minded people. So those two things are really, really important to me. I think the other problem we need to solve very quickly, especially in Raleigh and Charlotte, some of the areas that are growing in this state, is allowing ourselves to build our way out of this housing crisis that we're in. I find it completely ridiculous. I look around many of the neighborhoods in this area and I see all these diversity signs celebrating diversity, but I don't see any diversity in these neighborhoods. And I've come to believe that I think everybody likes the idea of diversity just in somebody else's neighborhood.
Right.
And this is a thing that I have found. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while, as you're out there walking the streets, you'll meet somebody and we'll have a very nice discussion about diversity. And how we both agree that it's very important. And then they'll proceed to complain that somebody wants to build a high-rise apartment building 2 or 3 blocks away. And so we need a way. We're not a home rule state. We're a Dillon rule state in North Carolina. So I believe that the General Assembly has the ability to write reasonable rules to streamline the permitting process. I call it a shall issue permit. If you are a builder, and you want to build an apartment building, or you want to build a certain type of neighborhood, you should be able to meet some minimum, and I really mean minimum requirements. And if you check all the boxes and there's no health and safety ramifications, you build your building and you get your permit in, I don't know, weeks. Whatever it takes now is far too long. It's hard to build things. One person shows up to a meeting and blocks of projects. Somebody's worried about the birds that are going to get killed, or the fact that they, quite frankly, just don't want the rednecks moving in next door. And we need to find ways to address that. And so I just think speeding up the permit process, getting rid of a lot of our environmental regulations. I ran a business that was growing. This a few years back in Morrisville, and I needed to expand a loading dock. So I called out several local contractors to put a loading dock on the other side of the building so I could turn that into productive space for shipping and receiving to help grow the business. And they both told me, well, no, because there is a tree where that loading dock needs to go, and that's going to require so much environmental work and petitioning the town of Morrisville, and the process is onerous, so juice not worth the squeeze. Now, this wasn't some majestic oak tree that was like 50 to 100 feet tall, housing animals. It was some kind of small, 4-foot scraggly tree. And one of them jokingly said, "Why don't you hit it with a forklift and then get rid of it?" But I did not do that, to be clear. I'm a pathetic rule follower, and so that's why I joke a lot of times I'm a libertarian, because I follow the rules. So I'm very interested in making less of them. So
yeah. Well, I mean, you really hit on one issue that's near and dear to my heart, which is affordable housing, because the solution is so simple and so libertarian. It's just a supply and demand problem. You increase the supply, and then it becomes a lot more affordable for a lot of people. And we have an issue right now where in urban areas, where people who are working service jobs to keep our urban areas going and keep us well fed and taken care of,
Yep.
can't afford to live near where they work at all. They have to live outside of town, or if they can even afford that.
Well,
So I appreciate you running on that issue.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at these neighborhoods in Cary. There are many restaurants here. I mean, the business for these restaurant owners is here, but you can't find workers because it's really hard to commute to a restaurant job in Cary from, somewhere in Johnston County or Lee County or Harnett County to try to go to work. And there used to be a time, I think largely before zoning laws, when you take Oakwood, for example. It's a neighborhood in Raleigh. It's beautiful. There's all kinds of beautiful homes there that were built. A lot of them were kit homes. They were, brought in on railroad cars, and they were put together. And you could buy a home in a catalog. And there are schools in the neighborhood, and there are businesses in the neighborhood. There's restaurants in the neighborhood that you can walk to. Many of those big old houses have been converted into multiple accessory dwelling units or apartments, and all of that grew out of a time when you could do that. Now those neighborhoods are illegal. And I find it very interesting that everybody wants to live in Oakwood, and you pay a premium to live in that neighborhood because of the way it was allowed to be built and developed. And it's kind of a bitter irony that now that's the most expensive place to live when, because it's illegal. You can't build neighborhoods like that anymore. It just doesn't make any sense. And it's frustrating to me to see things that make no sense, and we just continue to do them over and over again. So, yeah.
Well, there are some healthcare issues that both of you, Matt and George, have talked about that I want to swing back to, but I need to let Thomas get in here too. We're at half hour in, so this is not your first rodeo either. I know we've been doing this together for a long time, and you've run for office several times. And so I wanted to ask you, what is it that keeps you running for office? And also, is there anything this time around that you've noticed that's different from previous times we've run for office together before?
Well, it's a pleasure being on the stream tonight and listening to these other great candidates. But I'm Thomas Hill. I'm your Libertarian candidate for North Carolina Senate 34. It's in Cabarrus County. And I've run several times in the past. And this time's a little different. As some of you will know, the Libertarian Party in North Carolina, in conjunction with You Are the Power and local activists in Gastonia, have been supporting Joshua Rohr, an unhoused war veteran that was brutally attacked. Matter of fact, it's 3 years ago this past week that he was attacked, which led to the death of his service animal. Libertarians got together. Mike Ross, our great governor's candidate, his campaign rose out of that activism. That's how I'd met Mike before, but I really got to know him as a brother and a friend. What a beautiful human being. He stepped right in and helped Joshua get a replacement service animal. And also in conjunction with that, we've been supporting Faith, Hope, and Love Enrichment Ministries, a homeless ministry in Gastonia that was actually serving Joshua and the unhoused population. The city of Gastonia has been harassing him. He had the audacity to bring people in. It was 19 degrees. He brought them into the fellowship hall, and the city sent him a cease and desist letter, telling him to keep to the matters of the faith. And I say,
have you read the manual?
Sheltering how much faith? Anyway, I won't get into all the details, but it took 9 months of rallies. The local Republican Party wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. The local Democratic Party wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. A merry band of libertarians kept pounding and pounding for 9 months in a row. And I'll get on to your question, but I just wanted to say that we did get the body camera footage released. First piece of evidence that the police attorney used to not release the footage was a Facebook post I made. So that was interesting, being in a body camera hearing and hearing your Facebook post read. So yeah, I've been under investigation, but needless to say, I had no plans to run for office. But the experience of the last 3 years, there's too much unnecessary suffering imposed upon people from those who swear an oath to defend our life, liberty, and justly acquired property. And this was a hill I was going to die on, and still to this day. Good news in Joshua's case is currently going through the early phases in the 4th District, Western District of North Carolina. And I'm glad you brought up about qualified immunity. This is all about qualified immunity. And it's like I tell people at these forums I go to is if you don't hold oath breakers accountable, that only endangers the lives of the people that they're sworn to protect, but them themselves. Our law enforcement officers, the ones that run towards danger, that have a servant's heart, that take serious that oath. There's no whistleblower protection in North Carolina for these guys. If you speak out, you lose your job. So I have the ultimate sympathy for the position they're in, because they've got families to feed. They've got pensions hanging over their head. This is most of them, they went into law enforcement as a career. They don't have another out. I'm not making excuses for oath breaking, but I understand the situation, because several law enforcement officials anonymously have reached out to the team, sharing their disgust with what happened in Gastonia. But what's different this time, I've run for office several times, and normally, like for instance, in 2010, I ran for Congress. That was back, the Tea Party movement was hot, and I was kind of a darling to them because they didn't want to have anything to do with the establishment candidate running at that time. So I made some ingrounds there, and but this time around, I've been invited to 3 public in-person forums, all 3 by progressive-leaning groups, predominantly African American. And I'm not saying I'm getting standing ovations, but I'm getting ovations. It's reaching these people, and why shouldn't it? There's not another community in this state or this nation that's been affected by the failed policies and the war on drugs than our Black brothers and sisters. I was so inspired by what Pastor Moses is doing, turning around people. Deacons in his church are former addicts, some of them, that got their lives turned around by this man. That's the message that libertarians, whether it's faith-based or not, being in our communities. And that's why, now I spoke to one group. It's Down Home Cabarrus. Now they're a statewide organization. Yes, they lean blue. They're blue voters for the most part. And they'd already issued the endorsements before they had their forum. So I knew going in that, this is going to be, but I didn't worry about walking out with votes. I worried about walking out with respect. And I did that. And I've been invited back. I had one lady I spoke to wants me to come speak to the senior Democrat. So what I'm trying to say is I'm reaching people that normally I wouldn't reach with my standard. Normally when I run, I like to have a diverse platform. This time I focused on the most egregious and brutal violations of human dignity I've witnessed with my own eyes. Just watch the body cam footage. My website is libertyjubilee.com. I've got 3 videos on that website, and maybe I should have saved this for last, but I want to make sure I get this in. First video is the body camera footage of Joshua Rohr and his service animal being attacked. Second video is about Pastor Moses' ministry, and when his supporters and actually homeless people, we rallied and spoke out. A lot of these people, you will not believe how brilliant these people are. It's blown my mind. I've learned so much from serving. And I was so inspired by Pastor Moses, I became a member of his church, and it's amazing. But politics sometimes will make strange bedfellows. But the whole running on the justice thing and reaching human hearts and pulling a nice gentle tug on people's heartstrings. That's what I've tried to do, and it gives me encouragement because I saw so many people ignore what happened in Gastonia. They don't want to face it. Yeah. And it was a merry band of predominantly libertarians That's the only reason Joshua Rohr has a fighting chance. And I'm proud of Mike Ross.
Yeah.
He's won this election already. If you listen to him speak, you can see why Josh Stein and Mark Robinson are terrified of him. They will not show up at events he is at. Somebody needs to put a fear of God in him, and Mike Ross has done that. And I'm proud to be on his staff, and I am proud to call him a friend and brother. And I'm sorry I rambled, but
No. This is the whole purpose of this live stream.
And I want to say one other thing.
Sure.
This is where libertarians can really make a difference.
Yes.
And that is Wednesday, November 6th, that next morning. Somebody is going to be very upset with the results, assuming we get the results of the national election on election night. You never know. We need to be bridge builders. We need to extend grace to people, even the ones that's, criticize us for not supporting I know we've all gotten it from the left and the right. This election is too important. You're wasting your vote. How do you spoil an election that's rotten to the core? Just watch the campaign commercials. So, we're already on the higher ground. We just need to maintain it. And eventually the electorate, the people we're trying to reach will climb with us. And what we need to do is lift hopes and spirit. It's the dark times, friends. And all the parties are divided. Our own party at the national level, I won't get into it. They've got issues. So we need to be peacemakers. And I'm going to quit rambling and give my other candidates time.
You hit it on a couple. I do want to swing back around to sort of a general question in a moment. But there are a couple of other details about this that I wanted to bring out. Number one is that Pastor Moses has openly said that it wasn't for Mike Ross and libertarians, local libertarians, and You Are the Power, showing up for him at Gastonia City Council meetings, and just in general, his church would not exist anymore. And this is the one statistic that really leaps out at me, and correct me if I don't get it completely right. But my understanding is that due to Pastor Moses' ministry in downtown Gastonia, before he started, 16 people died that previous winter of exposure on the streets of the city. And for the next 2 years, while his ministry was active, 0 people died of exposure in Gastonia. And then they had him shut down for another year, and homeless people started dying again. And this is just a place where, locally, where we can make a really big difference in people's lives, and then use that to show people what really can be done privately on the local level to actually help people, and how government is not actually taking care of the problem. They're an act of obstruction to solving the problem. So, but I sort of connected to that. I love your T-shirt, man. And how can I get one of those T-shirts like that? I mean, I know I personally have one set aside for me, but how can a viewer of our live stream get that T-shirt?
You had to put me on the spot. You're not Larry King. I was promised Larry King softball questions.
I was trying to be this softball questions. Let me see if I can find it on here myself.
I think there's a link somewhere, but I do not have that information in front of me. So I apologize to.
It would be Fire the Uniparty. Is it .com?
Yes, FireTheUniparty.com. I think you can find a place to buy one there. But I've been
there is. Well, let's see. Yes, you can donate to Mike Ross at FireTheUniparty.com. So if you really are inspired by how people can actually help each other in their local community.
I'd like to speak to the homeless people dying. The numbers, I can't vouch for the numbers, but I believe you're low. I've heard those same numbers Pastor Moses is giving them. But sadly, if you go to that video, Spike Cohen, we got to give Spike a lot of credit, because Spike with his star power and You Are the Power. I was the state coordinator for You Are the Power, but I stepped down for the campaign since I'm a candidate. And but I'm telling you, You Are the Power is wonderful. They are doing the work that we should have been doing a long time ago in this movement, and that's directly helping people. You don't have to get elected to help people.
Oh, but to me, this is like part of beauty of the movement is that it is starting to spawn, because Spike was our vice presidential candidate last time. And, so you've got organizations like You Are the Power, powered by libertarians. Then you've got, Libertarian Mutual Aid, who has been doing a lot of local LPNC folks have worked with them to bring material aid to the victims of Hurricane Helene. Mm-hmm. So it is really nice to see, it's one thing to preach these ideals, it's another thing to make them real. And there are libertarians out there in North Carolina and all over the country who are doing exactly that. But while we still have like 15 minutes, there's one thing that we've talked about here that really fascinates me, which is the effects of the aftermath of the pandemic and the complete disaster that our government response was to that. Now, Matt, you had mentioned one thing that is a real hobby horse of mine, which is that we waived a whole bunch of rules during the height of the pandemic, such as allowing nurse practitioners from other states to come here and their license from their state would be sufficient. And we got rid of all these other rules that were an obstacle to addressing the pandemic. And you know what? The only repeal that we kept was cocktails to go. That was it. Other than that, we went back to all of the stupid healthcare rules and restrictions that we knew were completely useless 4 years ago. So this is just sort of open question to everybody. It's like, how does that resonate with people now? What has changed in the North Carolina electorate in response to that experience that we all went through with the failed government response to COVID-19?
Well, it's not just in healthcare. I don't want to leave the healthcare topic, but I mean, we watched our public school system largely being incredibly ineffective. I ran an office, a branch office through COVID, and they say that, disasters like COVID, things like that, supply shocks, acts of nature, they find you out. So anytime you have to live through difficulty, businesses that are weak, that aren't, financially stable or, have issues, those issues are magnified in a crisis. And you saw that happen with the public school system. I think you saw it happen with our health system. Mm-hmm. So you get found out when you have to live through difficult times like that. And I just find it completely, it's not funny, but it is funny that they relaxed the rules, didn't gasp. Nobody died. Nothing bad happened. Things got better. And then suddenly we go back to enforcing the same ridiculous rules again. And I also love it that in other states that have already led the way with allowing pharmacists to prescribe, with allowing nurse practitioners to practice without it being licensed under an MD, or for nurse anesthetists, all these other folks that are highly skilled, highly degreed people with tons of clinical experience. It's no wonder that they go out and they practice medicine in a way that maybe isn't the MD approach, but it is very effective, and it's proven to be effective. And you can, I need to put up stats from other states where healthcare outcomes are improving, but access to care is a huge problem for us in North Carolina. It's going to get worse. We're in a state that has a large population growth that doesn't look like that's going to decline anytime soon. And if I were a prospective business owner and I start to look at places like North Carolina, I'm wondering, well, yeah, I'd love to build my big factory or whatever it is there, but where are my people going to live, and are they going to have access to medicine and to healthcare? And those are challenges that they might not seem like challenges right now, and you might have a hard time believing that, but it will happen, because at some point our infrastructure won't be able to support the people that are living here, and the problems will just continue to get worse. So we really need to head these things off.
George, did you have? I mean,
let me chime in a little bit over here, because I think, I think one of the things that it's the underlying theme here is hypocrisy, isn't it? I mean, we all see it, and it's not just us here waving this particular flag. Everyone else out there sees it, and they're all sort of wondering what to do about it. I think a lot of times when we see, when you see that you are lied to, you sort of go through these steps of emotions. The first is disbelief, the second is embarrassment, and then when you sort of work through it, you get to the point where you start thinking, well, maybe I wasn't lied to, maybe I misunderstood. But then, so it requires people that are out here waving this flag of liberty to know, be like, no, yes, we were lied to, we were lied to, and you just keep saying it, and you'd be surprised how many people eventually come around and they're like, nah, you guys are right, actually. So I sort of wanted to talk a little bit about rules that, you know, were good then, but now not good now. So for example, let's talk about kids, mask mandates for kids in school, right? That was, for me, that was a very emotional issue. Not even because my kids were out there, you know, subjected to this, but the funniest thing of all is just literally last, I think Saturday, I get a phone call, automated phone call from my school district. Now my oldest daughter, she's in first grade, and you know, they say, make sure, we know it's Halloween, but make sure your kid does not come to school in a mask. And it's like, oh, now it's a problem. Oh my goodness.
I know.
You know?
It's like I found it really amusing that we had a time in our history where you were required to wear a mask if you walked into a bank or a gun store.
Yeah, you know, and then there's just other things. There's other things that people see the hypocrisy in. I mean, if we switch the topic real quick to you know, election integrity, right? So I mentioned a little bit earlier that I had tried to run in 2022. Well, the reason it didn't go through is because I had not properly affiliated myself with Libertarian Party
Right.
90 days prior to
Right.
when that was a requirement. And I remember having you know, I protested their decision, and there was a whole board from the North Carolina State Board of Elections. And I remember one particular gentleman using the term, you know, the words have meanings. And I was just thought to myself, like, really? Because if I think back to what just happened now with RFK, you know, they bent the rules for him to be able to be registered. And then all of a sudden they made an exception for him to take his name off the ballot. So it just smacks of hypocrisy left and right. And when you sit down and you look at it, it's like, oh, actually what matters more to you guys, the people that are, you know, these oath takers, is the flag you're waving, you know. And I think the more we keep pointing out the hypocrisy, the more we'll be able to get through and break through this, you know, malaise that everyone's pretty tired of dealing with.
Oh yeah, no, and you really hit something that hits close to home, because I have to confess, you know, I'm 63. I've had a heart attack. I have other what they call comorbidity factors. And so when COVID started going around, I freaked out, you know, because oh man, this stuff could kill me. And it killed people. I think we all know people who died from it. And so I was kind of susceptible to the government propaganda. But the first clue that I had that they were just making up nonsense was when it came out that Anthony Fauci lied at the beginning about masks. So no. Masks don't help at all. You know, they're not going to help you at all. And then admitted later that the reason why he said that at that time, when the government shortly thereafter completely changed their policy, it's like everyone must wear a mask all the time, if you're even allowed to be in the same room with each other at all, is that we were just worried that there would be this run on masks and there would be shortages. It's like, what? Now, you can debate the policy of whether or not masks are effective or not. You know, that to me is kind of beside the point, but just like that they would treat such a serious public health matter so cavalierly because they were worried about economic shortages or whatever. It's like, so
to me, I just wanted to chime in. So Yeah, I was unceremoniously disinvited from extending my enlistment with the U.S. Navy Reserves back in the
Hmm.
day. I declined to take that vaccine, and the
Hmm.
reason I declined is it's not even so much because I was ever any kind of anti-vaxxer. You know, I never. I mean, come on, I was in the Navy. I did everything they told me to do up until a certain point. And what to me was the very, the evident, the catalyst was basically I saw that actually the rules that they were preaching only applied when it came to political speech that, certain status powers weren't in favor of. And I was just like,
Right.
wow, really? So, like, I'll just give one real quick example. State of Nevada, my wife and I, we had a trip to Las Vegas. We'd been waiting for it for a while. And, a few days before we showed up, they implemented their restrictions. And while we were there, a lot of different things came to our attention. But the one thing that struck me as just really weird is uh, maximum limitation of 50 people per church service or per church or per whatever instance. And yet, every casino we stepped into was 50% maximum occupancy. And I just thought to myself, like, how do you justify any of this? And the
You can't
fact
go to
that
church, but you can go to Walmart. You know? I'm
it
sorry
was
to interrupt you, but yeah.
no, no, no. I mean, everyone saw it. And the more we just remind people, like, hey, you remember that time when we were all, lied to? Like, it's okay to talk about it. We don't have to, bury our heads in the sand and say, well, come up with some excuse about why you're uncomfortable to talk about it. It's this was our reality. And I'll finish by saying this. The scariest part is that the power to do the same thing is still exactly the
Yeah.
same. The only thing that changed is that it's now just a little more unpopular.
Yes. Oh, that is that is so very true. So we have about 5 minutes left. Let me just throw it open. Is there anything that any of y'all have been burning to say during this last hour that I haven't asked you about yet that you want to get into, or any closing message that you have for the live stream audience?
I'll chime in with one more thing, and I'm only going
Oh
to
yeah.
say it because it upset me when I saw this happen. So I talked about my opponent, Greg Murphy. Listen, the guy had like a standing room, audience with his voters back in the day, and one of the individuals that really doesn't like him now shared with me this video. There was a lady that was basically crying and begging and saying, "Hey, can you please do something about these tactics, these mandates, and everything?" And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders, like, "No, I think this is a good idea." So anyone that's in the third district, just keep that in mind. Like, he was in favor of it. And then the other thing is basically, as an immigrant myself, when he takes out a paid for spot on Fox News to go out there and say that we're all dealing with inflation because illegal immigrants are coming into this country, like, come on, man. Like, you're not even trying at this point. End rant.
I know that we're dealing with inflation because they turned on the money printer under his watch. They just print. Oh, let's just print up a few more $1 trillion in here. Let's see if we can buy everybody off with $1,200 here and there. And now it's like, I saw somebody on Twitter remark, I don't need the government to try to tell me how the economy is doing. I let my grocery bill do that for me. So, but Matt or Thomas, did you have anything else you wanted to close with?
Matt, go ahead.
Well, I guess I'll say this and try to keep it short. I just, in terms of this two-party situation that we have in this country, I think there's a lot of mythology that is perpetuated by Republicans and Democrats that if you don't vote, you throw your vote away. And I think it's very important for us to all realize that we get the government we deserve. Like George Carlin said, he doesn't complain about the politicians. That's the best we have to offer. So if we continue to vote for the same parties over and over again, we've literally reached Einstein's definition of insanity. It's voting for an R or a D over and over again. So vote for individual candidates. We get the government we deserve. If we start to vote for individuals, we will see some things change, and they'll change for the better. But you have to do it. And if you walk into that voting booth and you fall victim to the mythology that it's a binary choice, And I'm sorry, we have to look at ourselves and go, hey, look, these politicians are a reflection of us. So go vote for the individual. It doesn't matter if it's Green Party, if it's a Republican or a Democrat, but please don't vote for a party. Don't buy into partisan mythology. Go vote for the individual candidate that best represents you.
Well, like I said, Thomas, we've been doing this together for a long time, so it gives me a little pleasure to give you the last word on this session tonight.
Well, I appreciate it, and I just want to thank you, Sean, for being such a gracious host and guiding us through this. And I love you, brother. And yeah, we could tell some stories, but tonight's not the night to do it. But
We'll
hey, yeah, let's do that, please. But after the election, we get some rest. But I would just like to say to my fellow libertarians, best wishes. We got other candidates watching, I'm sure, in the live stream, and the other activists. We got about a week to go, so let's hit it. And remember, Mike Ross and our other council of state candidates. We've got a great slate this year. It's really strong. I'm honored to be a small part of that. And let's just remember that on Wednesday, November 6th, a lot of our neighbors are going to be upset. Let's swallow some pride and ego and be good neighbors and graceful. And let's heal our communities, because we can do better than this. We're all tired of it. I don't care what your political affiliation is. We're all tired of the commercials and all the division and the hate. Let's just try to love each other. I know that sounds trite maybe, but it's the truth, man. Politics is not worth it. Politician is not worth dividing families and communities over. Never.
Well, I was thinking you're harsh on my buzz, because I was really looking forward to taunting the losers after next week. But I think you just make a really excellent point that people are, and all of you really have sort of made this point tonight, that people are so tired of the divisions and so tired of the culture war and so tired of being told who is the enemy within and who of your neighbors do you need to hate, and so I think you're right. It's really powerful to be able to give that message of love and healing and reconciliation. And I think that people really crave that right now. So I think that's sage advice, and I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
So, well, I want to thank y'all. I want to thank the three of you for running very much. You all represented our party so well, and I'm really proud, to be on the same ticket with you all. As Thomas mentioned, we've got 4 candidates for Council of State, starting with Mike Ross, our candidate for governor, including myself. We have Chase Oliver and Mike Trematt running for president and vice president, and we've got at least that many candidates on every single ballot in North Carolina. Plus, you've got candidates for General Assembly. You've got candidates for every kind of office that there is on there. So, I would appreciate, listeners, if you see some libertarians on your ballot, give us a shot. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you, Larry, for being the technical help to make this all possible. And we'll catch up after the election and see how we feel we did.